Hey guys, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ashley.
And this is Undaunted Pursuit Podcast. All right. Let's see.
I'll take my crop and put it on my side.
Yes. That way I have mine. Oh. All right. Okay. Let's do this thing. I may have to leave and get a snack here before too long, too, I guess.
I brought you one. I bring my husband snacks.
Yes, we need snacks. We haven't eaten today. Okay. All right, guys, welcome back to Undaunted Pursuit Podcast. We're glad you're here this week, and Ashley and I are going to be continuing our discussion on marriage, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm glad to be here, and it's always a struggle to try and get this done in a week, especially the two of us to sit down and do this, but luckily our kids are old enough now that they can manage themselves for a little while at least.
At least for a couple hours.
But yeah, anyway, let's see here. So we're gonna be a couple different places throughout the Bible today, and we're starting Ecclesiastes and eventually find ourselves in the love chapter. So yeah, it'll be good. Man, what are some things that I was thinking of when we were talking about that? Either way, I'm sure they'll come up while we're doing this. Whatever. Do you have anything to add before? I hope that's not right. I was just looking at my computer. It says rain coming in about 3.5 hours.
I told you to roll up the windows.
Man, we got a lot of work to do outside, and we don't have time for any rain. Plus, it's fire season, right? But anyway, so all right, so let's get into this because this is probably going to be a long enough discussion as it is. We are talking about marriage, and we're going to look at two different viewpoints, right?
Yes.
We're going to look at everybody's. And it's going to look like the Bible is contradictory, and absolutely not. But here, we're going to look at why it's better for two to be one in Ecclesiastes, and then we're going to look at why Paul says it's better to be alone. So, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 9 through 12, right? And 9 through 12, starting at 9, says, two are better than one because they have a more satisfying return for their labor.
Yes.
For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and does not have another to lift him up. Yes.
And you can go back for context on that. Verse 8, it says, there was a certain man without a dependent, having neither child nor brother, yet there was no end to all of his labor. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with the riches, and he never asked, for whom do I labor and deprive myself of pleasure? This too is vanity. Yes, it is a painful effort and an unhappy task. And then, of course, he continues in verse 9 with, two are better than one because they have more satisfying return for their labor.
Right. Two are better than one. When you think about that, how often, we can do a whole lot of things by ourselves. But, more people make easier work.
Many hands make light work.
That's it. That's the word. That's what I was looking for. And throughout this section, there's an emphasis on these obvious benefits of companions. And it says here in the study Bible here, the intimacy and sharing of life brings relief for the problem of isolation and loneliness. A companion can offer assistance, comfort, and defense. A threefold cord, right?
Yep.
So how often do you see, there was a time that I really liked watching the Alone series. And, but it wears down on a person, being alone for that long. If you see those guys towards the end of that competition, and they really start getting wore down. So I mean, we weren't. It's not the way God made us. We weren't made to be alone. I found this funny today, and we didn't read this verse right off in Sunday school this morning, but I came across in Proverbs 18. Verse 22, he who finds a true and faithful wife finds a good thing and obtains favor and approval from the Lord. Mm-hmm. So marriage and companionship is sanctioned. It's sanctioned by God. Then we're talking, obviously, again, we got to make ourselves clear, especially this day and age, between a man and a woman.
Which is so sad.
Right. But, it went in to say in the Ecclesiastes 4, verse 10, if either of them falls, one will lift up his companion, or they should, right? Yeah. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, because who's going to pick him up? And, that's what it goes on to say. Who else is there to pick him up? And then, verse 11, as we get in there, again, if two lie down together, then they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Mm-hmm. So you see this whole thing, and it's like,
Yeah. Well, what I really like is, I know I brought, verse 8 into this, but the reason I brought verse 8 into this is because it shows you in verse 8 that one alone starts loving the earthly things, right? The things that'll vanish, the things that won't bring fulfillment. And having two helps you keep that focus on another person instead of just yourself.
Yeah, right? It also keeps your perspective.
Yep.
And accountability.
Yeah.
Right? Accountability is like, if you didn't have anybody looking over your shoulder, then you could go astray.
For sure.
Or whatever. And I'm not saying, because we're going to get on the other side of this in Corinthians, but I'm not saying that those people that are single out there don't have any accountability. You should be. If you aren't married, should be accountability through community, right? Through fellow brothers or sisters, right? That can help you. Yeah. The idea is that you don't hole up by yourself, no matter how busy you might think you are. That it's just not. You need to get out there and you need to do life with other people.
With other believers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. With other believers, especially, right? Yeah. Because you gotta watch that too, right?
Well, there's the saying that the four people you surround yourself with the most, you rub off on each other and you take on characteristics of each other, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at that in perspective of your life, the four people you are around the most, you put your most time into, those are the four that you're going to look like, right? Or you're going to act like.
Right.
And the whole point of making sure that you have Christian or fellow believers as your core four is because that's what we all should be striving for, is to look like Christ, right?
Yeah.
We should all be striving to look like Christ. So if we don't have those four core people as fellow believers, then it's easier for us to fall away from the faith.
Exactly. Man, there's just so much good things that in this, especially this chapter 4 and chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes. I would, as I was sitting there reading for this, I wanted to keep going further, but it doesn't really apply yet to our podcast. Eventually,
yeah.
Eventually, I'd love to do a full study on Ecclesiastes. It's great.
Great book.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And but there's that, right? A chord in this little set of verses that we picked out of here was a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. What kind of, to me that kind of it sounds a lot like a Trinity, right?
Sure.
Or cord of 3 strands, husband, wife, God at the forefront of that, right? And that bond, I guess, or that pairing is not easily broken.
Right. Well, it makes a triangle, right?
Mm-hmm.
3 makes a triangle, and triangle is one of the strongest shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Even in in geometry or in building or anything, they say triangles are the strongest shape.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense because you have, the two leaning together and then the one on the bottom that's the support for the two up top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you constantly always have each other's, backs or support.
Yeah. Yep. I get it. Okay, so now we're just kind of, it's hard, especially you've gone all day, trying to get the ball rolling when you get on a podcast and get into a Bible study and everything. So now I think where the real meat of this whole episode is going to be is out of this 1 Corinthians, right?
1 Corinthians chapter 7.
Chapter 7, yeah.
And it's the whole chapter.
Pretty much. I mean, we're gonna skim through it, little by little.
Yeah.
Paul kicks this chapter out by saying it is good for a man not to touch a woman outside of marriage. Let's just start right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, yes, okay. We've made our mistakes, and there's a lot of people that have, right?
Well, you follow what the world tells you, and the world tells you completely opposite of what is just said right there, right?
Exactly.
The world tells you that it is okay to do anything you want if you're not married. As long as you're under the umbrella of a relationship, right? And sometimes even then not that. But for the most part, society or earthly perspective is if you're in a relationship, you're good to go. Mm-hmm. That's not biblical. It's if you're in a marriage, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. God doesn't want you just test driving this out.
And the reason for that is you put yourself in jeopardy of sin. You put yourself in jeopardy of falling to temptations more readily. You find yourself you're flirting with disasters. What you're
exactly, because you're gonna see a lot of people that are like, oh well, we're remaining pure, we're good to go, except we decided to move into each other. But what does Paul say in verse 2 there? Because of it's not good for a man to touch a woman outside of marriage, right? But because of the temptation to participate in sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Okay? You can't just simply... We know this. You're not fooling anybody. If you're living together, you're going to be tempted. And as strong as you are at some point, outside of... If you're living outside of marriage, at some point, you're weak. And it's just not... It's just not... And of course, we're trying to instill that in our kids, right? You don't want your kids to make the same mistakes you did, and even us, right?
Yep.
But Lord willing, here we are, and talking about this. So hopefully, it's one of those situations like we've learned our lesson, and we don't want anybody else making the same mistakes. Mm-hmm. And Lord willing, it worked out. And that was only God, right? Because it could have been worse. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the time, you do have to understand that at the time we were unequally yoked, because I was not following, the Lord at all. Like I honestly had been through a lot of church hurt, and I was not going to church. I wasn't doing anything when we got together. So.
Well, and to be brutally honest with you, it was questionable if I was, even, really, right? Mm-hmm. I was living pretty disobediently, and God brought us back from there.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah. But, here's the thing. God's Word's full of these instructions and how we're supposed to act as a married couple, husband and wife. Mm-hmm. And, we, as husbands, we have this duty to fulfill to our wives with goodwill and kindness. And likewise, vice versa, wife to the husband. Paul brings this up in verse 4. A wife does not have exclusive authority over her own body, but the husband shares with her. And likewise, the husband does not have exclusive authority over his body, but the wife shares with him. You see this. You see this thing. Marriages today don't look like this at all. We see this in our...
We say the words, right, in the vows. What's yours is mine and mine is yours, right? Mm-hmm. That's what this is essentially meaning.
Yep.
But we take that into context of tangible items.
Yeah, exactly.
We take that in the context of earthly tangible items instead of, I need to talk to you about what's going on and any decisions I want to make, and you need to talk to me. Same thing. It's about conversation. It's about relationship. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Instead, we put this wall up and we're like, oh, no, it's mine. I get to decide every bit of it. It's my body.
Or I'm head of the household. I can do what I want. And then she's got to ask me for permission. No.
And it can go vice. Like I said, we're in a world where, unfortunately, both sides are still going on.
Yeah.
You have, the women who are like, my body, my choice, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good night.
It's not your body.
Well,
it's God's.
We're going down a whole nother rabbit hole with that one. But, that's a saying that most of you, I'm sure, have heard. My body, my right. My body, my say. And then, of course, you have, in that same area, you have the men who still are dictators over every aspect of their wife or their household.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you see that? Like, we've seen that. We've seen that a lot.
Yes.
And way too much. It's like, oh my goodness, husband won't let her, what was it? I'm thinking
won't
of something.
Won't even let her choose her medical, what she's going to get done for, like, pills that she's going to take.
Yeah, exactly. Or won't let her go to the store by herself.
Yeah.
Or, I'm thinking of one, we're not going to mention any names, but, it was a long time ago where, like, she had to call her husband for permission to even watch a movie with us. That, this was a long time ago. You probably wouldn't remember it, but either way, it's like call and ask permission for these minuscule things.
Oh,
remember?
Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I just connected dots. He is 100% right. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's I forgot about that one.
That was a crazy relationship.
That was a very, very crazy relationship. I forgot all about that. That was early.
But yeah, that was early on in our marriage. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're not going to be like that. Or like we talked last week, and how you see marriages failing and unhappy marriages. They may still be married, but they are so lorded, or this money and leadership is so lorded over them that they're just unhappy together. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we're seeing. That's unbiblical marriage.
Right.
And how do you call yourself a Christian if you're living in a marriage like that, where you're treating your wife or your spouse, husband, wife, either way, it goes both ways, right? Mm-hmm. Women can treat men the same way.
Oh yes, and women can be very rude sometimes to their husbands.
So how do you call yourself a Christian when you live that way? We make mistakes, yes, and yes, your focus gets lost from time to time, but if it's brought up to you, then you make an effort to change that. Okay, so this is where we're getting into the nitty gritty here.
This is verse 5.
Mm-hmm. Do not deprive each other of marital rights, right? Except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves unhindered to prayer, but come together again so that Satan will not tempt you to sin because of your lack of your self-control.
Yes.
Okay. This is a big one.
Yeah, it is.
Sex is a beautiful thing.
It is.
God's given it to within the confines of marriage as in sex outside of marriage. It does. There is a part of you that gets lost when you do.
You give part of yourself away every time.
Exactly.
Yes. And that's why God ordained it for you to have one spouse, because that way you're continually, like in verse 4, you're continually sharing that, right? Yeah. It's not that you're giving it to a person and then you never see that person again, right? Like a one night stand. Mm-hmm. You're giving part of your body or your part of yourself away every time. And in a marriage, it doesn't go anywhere. It just comes right back to you. It's just a continual cycle, a continual circle of give and take and give and take,
Yeah.
Whether the husband's giving or the wife is giving, either way, it's a continual cycle. So when you are in that relation, you are in the marital relationships, that's why you're supposed to be married, is so that it continually doesn't just leave from you, right?
Yep. And here's the thing, and we see this a lot too, right? A lot. It's so applicable, right?
Because it is, sexual sin is one of the, I would say, one of the most committed sins, if you will.
Sure.
And so it's because of that, all of us, not just women, not just men, we have all given sex a power, so to speak. And whoever denies that gains that power is the thought right now, right? Or not right now, not in our marriage, but you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So if I'm angry at you, I can withhold that because that's a power that I know you need.
Right.
Or vice versa, because women can have just as much of a sexual drive in a relationship.
Yeah.
Or if the man is frustrated with his wife, it is used as a tool or a weapon.
Yes.
Against the other.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with it. Is you start depriving your spouse of the
need.
The need, or just the goodness that God has blessed you with within the marriage, and this really good thing of sex and how driving it is, right? The way God made our bodies, you start depriving that, you start using that as a weapon, and the devil's going to just sneak right in, and it's going to be ever so subtle, right?
Well, you're setting your spouse up, or your partner, or it should be spouse. I'm just going to go with spouse. You're setting your spouse up as with a stumbling block is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah.
A crumbling foundation, a crumbling block, whatever you want to say, something that's going to trip them up, right? If you're using sex as a power, as a weapon against your spouse, your husband, your wife, whatever, you are setting your husband or wife up
for failure,
to fall.
Yep.
And to fall into what? Into sin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how easy is it? Because you do. It's there. People, this starts happening, and then all of a sudden they start falling into pornography, and it's just a bad road. And then if you want to get on that topic, right, you fall into pornography. Well, now your idea of what this beautiful thing called sex that God blessed you with in a marriage is all of a sudden so twisted, right? And it has, when you do come together in the marriage bed, it's just not as fulfilling because you've poisoned that,
and
that
I'll
outlook.
do you one better. And the problem is not only do you set them up for sin, but you set them up for multiple sins, right? You set them up for sexual sin by going to pornography. You set them up for adultery by going to pornography because you're lusting as you're watching,
Exactly.
And you're just it's a recipe for disaster because you're setting them up for more than one.
It is because it is already built into us by God for community and companionship. Because that's who, God desires community and companionship, right? That's why he made us. Or if he didn't desire that, he wouldn't have made us. So it's innate in us to want that. So now when we start getting deprived as a couple, whoever's holding out, and that, and this is, we're talking about mutual agreements, right? It's not like I'm going to overpower you and take what I need, right? This is a mutual agreement. It wasn't until hold on, let me finish my thought though. That's okay. We drove it home. But it wasn't until, if you think about it, when did it really start? And this is getting really personal, but it gets better. The more you devote to each other and not depriving those needs, right? I'm trying to be nice, right? And kind of keep some stuff. But it does. It gets better. Sex gets better when you are not holding out and when you're not using it as a weapon and you're fully in tune, right?
It's because you're able to fully see the beauty of what it was created for. That's why, as you are actually using or participating in it as God intended, you see the beauty, and everything God creates has beauty. Everything he intends has beauty. And so when you're using it as God intended, you can't help but see the beauty in what God gave you.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, this, of course, this area too, we've had our ups and downs. No pun intended. You should see her face. I wanted to add that in there. But no, but in all seriousness, we have had our ups and downs in this area, and it wasn't until I've got her blushing here.
Wow.
But it's remember what we were talking about last week was this selfishness, right?
Yeah, you gotta give me a minute. All right. Wow, you can't just drop a mic and then expect me to roll on with that one. All right. Selfishness, yes.
It's a selfishness issue.
Yes, for sure.
Issue. Yes, exactly. Did I get you going on that one?
Yes. Yeah. A little bit...
Well, see, we ain't got nobody telling us what we can or can't say on here. I kept it PG. All right, so Paul goes on to say here, I wish that all people were as I am, but each person has his own gift, and that's what it is, right? Being able to be single and have that, because if we back up just a little bit, right? In that don't deprive each other of marital rights because of your lack of self-control. We all, whether you want to admit it or not, we don't have self-control. It's hard. And Paul did, right? And God blesses people to be single and to have the self-control not to be tempted into these sexual sins, right? And he says, I say to the unmarried and to the widows, verse 8, as a practical matter, it's good that they remain single. Why? When this is, I told you we were going to look at both contrasts. In Ecclesiastes, it says 2 is better than 1, right? Mm-hmm. But now here we see Paul saying, oh, well, it's better to be single. Sometimes we joke a lot, right? If one of us were to pass away, that we wouldn't marry again, no. Or no. Marriage is hard, and it is better to be single. But why is it better to be single? What Paul is talking about here is that, well, if you're going to be single, if you're gifted with singleness, then
if you're gifted with the self-control in sexual matters,
exactly. That's why I got married. I wasn't, so I lacked self-control.
Nor was I, love.
But then you can devote yourself fully. You don't have to worry about your time is not torn between, family. Not that this is a bad thing. God blesses you with families and community and all that.
But with each blessing also comes an additional struggle. Like not saying that your family is a struggle,
right? But
it can be a struggle trying to balance couple time, God's time, and throwing in a family on top of that, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot to juggle. And it's something that you can be blessed with by having a family for sure.
Yep.
But with those blessings of your children and your family also comes additional stress. It's more stress on the husband for responsibility. It's more stress on the wife, right?
Yep.
More stress on the relationship. And then, of course, what always has more stress when you add more stress to everything? Your relationship with God.
Exactly. Yep. Because something's got to pay. Something's going to be lacking. And most of the time what happens is you push God to the side because you're too worried about everything else. This is exactly why Paul is saying what he is saying here in this passage here.
You have to be a very good juggler. Very good juggler. And I would like to say that for the most part, I think most of the people that we know, with families and stuff, they are great jugglers of time between God and their family. We all are going to fail at times, right?
Sure.
There's times where Aaron and I will go, we generally try and do a study together. And it has been very busy, and I hate that word, but it has been very busy we have not done a study together. Instead,
Yep.
we're doing our study for the podcast, or we're doing a study for our small group, and we have not added the one for just us on top of that. Normally we do have at least 3 or 4 studies going at a time.
Yeah, and you want a healthy marriage? That's where it starts, right?
Oh man,
We've
been blessed beyond blessed every time we've done a study
when we
together.
started praying with each other, and we started doing studies together, and I pray all the time that God speaks to you or me, and we're going to get into that too, because
for sure.
Why I pray that, like if God's to speak to you, He is also speaking to me.
Yeah.
If He's speaking to me, He is also speaking to you. So
because we are one, and because we are married and in a joint relationship.
exactly,
Yeah.
and we'll talk a little bit more about that here coming up in just a second.
I kind of jumped it on that. I apologize.
That's all right. But that's the thing. It's like are you striving for a better marriage? Start praying together.
Mm-hmm.
Start digging into God's Word together. It's not a weird thing. It really isn't.
No, it's quite beautiful, actually.
It wasn't until we started doing that,
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about. I think I've talked about it here on this podcast that where it all started was a fast together, and it's like, even though I didn't feel like probably I'm sure I can't remember, right, but even though I may not have felt like fasting at the time, holy smokes, did it change our lives.
See, and it's funny because that fast I remember very vividly, because my fast was to have conversations and to have this relationship, like a Christ-centered relationship with you, because we didn't have it at the time.
Right.
We didn't talk a whole lot about Jesus in our family.
No.
We went to church on Sunday, and the Lord was just pressing on me, fasting. And of course, if you know anything about my background, I mean, I kind of went to church with anybody and everybody who I could,
right,
because that's just what we did, and that's just what I did. And so the Lord pressed fasting on me, and I came into this going, Lord, that's what the Catholics do. And so it took about a year of Him just continuing to press that, and I was studying deep and trying to find anything and everything on fasting in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally came to you and I said, hey, I can't fight this anymore. I'm supposed to do a fast. And my fast was for our relationship.
Yep.
It was for our relationship to grow spiritually and in the Lord more. And so it's funny that you don't remember it, because I remember coming to you and I'm like, you can join in if you want to. I'd really love for you to. You don't have to, but this is what it is. And then from that point on, it was like, dove straight into the ocean deep,
yeah,
and it was amazing. And it has just been, like a torpedo ride the whole way.
Right.
It's been beautiful.
I remember the transformation that happened. We got our sample. So I remember. All right, just hold on. Take a break.
Pause.
Okay.
All right, we moved the chicken and we're back.
And we can still hear it. It's going to just sit there and squawk, but hopefully it's not going to be too loud and you can't hear it in the mic and all that fun stuff. So anyway, so about that fast, I remember the transformation. I just don't remember how it went down, right? I remember what happened throughout the process and how things changed and everything. But it was just good,
All of that to say, go and study. Do a study with your spouse. Go in and do prayer time with your spouse. That's kind of where that rabbit hole went from.
Well, and here's the thing, and you may not want to bring it up, but I do, because there's this misconception right now that I just recently heard about keeping church separate or ministry separate from your family, which is just the most preposterous idea ever. That at some point in time you need to separate what you're doing for the Lord from your family. I mean, that's stupid.
It's completely unbiblical.
It's completely unbiblical. If anything, you should be you should be pressing in more and doing more for the Lord, for your family, because like we said, I believe last week, that there's eternal lives are at stake here. And most of the time, your kids, if you're blessed with kids, whoever, even your family, in your family circles, they see this transformation that we were just talking about. Or your kids start seeing mommy and daddy praying together or studying together. All of a sudden, they start being curious and they start modeling that. Now, what's the problem? That's the problem with today's society. Our culture today doesn't have enough church, doesn't have enough ministry inside the homes, and that's why you see kids walking away from the faith. That's why you see kids consistently getting in trouble. That's why you see 13-year-olds getting pregnant in school, and because God has been removed from the home.
More than that, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that for sure. But I would say more than that is the fact that example of a family has been, the enemy has neutralized what a family is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And how has he neutralized it? Both parents now have to work.
Yeah.
So who's pouring into those kids? TV or the government.
Yep. And what are they doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, if you are blessed enough, as we are, that the Lord has allowed me to stay home with the kids, it's, you're still getting, but you still have all of those earthly things that are influencing, whether your friends, are blessed enough to be able to. And it's few and far between that you will find a single income family, especially as large as ours, single income family being able to make it these days. And that's solely because they want to tear apart what a family should be.
That's a timeless classic tactic of the evil one.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's you make those mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Or not those mistakes, but these excuses.
Yep.
All of a sudden, you're too busy for God, right? We can't add anything else.
I only get 2 days off with my family. I don't really want to spend that time, and I'm not saying that that's in our family or anything, but I only get 2 days off, so I don't want to spend that time in the Lord or doing something at the church, or I want to spend it with my family. Exactly.
What was the statement I made earlier today? I think it was like, you busy yourself out of God, right? Is that how I put it? Something like that. You excuse something around those lines, right? You just make yourself too busy. It's okay to slow down every so often, right?
Yeah.
And then,
well, that was what was modeled biblically with the Sabbath.
Yeah.
That was there for a slowdown, for a rest, for a reason.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's like, well, why can't I can't add another thing to my list, so I can't do this, or I can't do that, whatever ministry, worship nights, or
your children
whatever.
are going to be okay if you don't do every sport.
Yes.
Your children are going to be okay if they are not in soccer and basketball at the same time.
Yeah, because here's the reality.
I don't even know if those two go together.
Well,
the same
whatever.
Season, but whatever.
The reality of the situation is, and it's like, you listen, and who are they to speak? They dig into and get busy during wrestling season. Well, that's pretty much one sport, and I still pressing in on a weekly basis. But
yes, but we never will miss our small groups, even with wrestling.
Exactly.
That'll be a priority.
Yep.
That's the priority over wrestling, and I don't care.
God always takes priority.
Yep. And so there's, not to say that we are doing it right by any means, but, yes, you do have to allow your kids to be a part of some of that stuff for sure. But you still need to set guidelines. And I know that people are going to say, oh, well, let your yes be a yes and your no be a no. And so if you say yes to wrestling, then you need to say yes at all times. I said yes to the Lord first and foremost.
Exactly.
And so if I have a small group that meets every Tuesday, that takes priority over Tuesday night wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
If we have Wednesday night church or youth group on Wednesday night, that takes priority over wrestling.
Yeah.
Because I said yes to the Lord first.
Yep.
And more than that, our family, each individual in our family has said yes to the Lord.
Yeah.
in their own. And so that was the first commitment that they made before any sports.
So you allowing that to take priority? What are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our spouses, right?
Teaching them it's okay to put God on the back burner.
Exactly. And then
and that's the other thing is, it was just this one time, right? Or it's just this one sport. Well, what happens next? Oh, well, it's just these two things. It's just these three things until you are where we were just talking about. You are too busy for God.
Yep. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in it. But just keep in mind, here's the reality of it, right? Out of everybody in this nation, and we'll speak just to this nation, less than 1% of your kids are ever going to make a living doing whatever sport you have them in as a child. I think it's even more minuscule than 1%.
I have no doubt. But we'll be very kind with 1%.
With 1%. So it's not that important, is what we're getting at. And so anyway, that was a heck of a rabbit trail. We're kind of at verse 10, and we're going to jump around because we don't need to go through all of 7 here. Because we're talking about, we've kind of touched on a little bit of it. Verse 10, do not, but to the married believers, I give instructions. Not I, but the Lord. The wife is not to separate from her husband. And this happens, right? Divorce happens. It's a nasty thing that happens in our broken world that we live in, right? And so that the husband should not leave his wife. So that's not an option for us.
No.
Right?
And I would beg to say, I would hope that a lot of you would listen to this advice from us. I mean, like I said, we are not experts in any fashion. But if you always keep divorce as a possibility in your back burner, you have that boat to get on, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're married, you burn that boat. That's not an option.
Yeah.
You work together and you bring it to Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that should be the method. It's not, okay, I'll just deal with what I've got until he dies, or I'll just deal with what I've got until she dies. No. That is not a biblical marriage.
No.
No, that is not a biblical marriage. What we're talking about is together, you come together.
Yeah.
With Christ at the front to fix it, to fix the problem, to fix the heart issue, to fix whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, husbands, you should be chasing after your wives. Wives, you should be chasing after your husbands. Most importantly, you both should be chasing after God himself.
Amen.
And I know, okay, so we don't have the time on this week's episode to get into everything that is listed here in 1 Corinthians between believing and unbelieving spouses being unequally yoked, and how if
That's a whole other podcast.
That is a whole other podcast. But,
and in all honesty, that's a whole other podcast just so that you can describe what unequally yoked truly means biblically.
Yeah, exactly. We'll round it out here, right? And this is a little lighthearted if you go to verse 28. But if you do marry, right, whether that's unequally yoked or not, this is an overarching statement here. You have not sinned. If you do marry, you have not sinned in doing so. That's the promise right there, right? You haven't sinned in marrying. God wants you to be married. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned in doing so. Yet those who marry will have troubles, which are special challenges in this life, and I am trying to spare you of that. This is Paul saying, this is him rounding out this idea of, to remain single is a blessing and a gift from God, but I can control myself. God's blessed me with a great wife, and together we are one person. And it's just, that's the thing. We are one. That gets so misconstrued that we are not just two people. We may be in flesh, but in Christ we are just one.
Yep.
Right? But I say this, believers, the time has been shortened, so that from now on even those who have wives should be as though they did not. That's interesting. That was verse 29. See, and I'd have to dig into this a little bit more, but the way that kind of reads is, so you're married, you're going to face these troubles, and it's exactly what we were talking about. It's like, you know, you should be as though you did not have wives, you did not get married, so you should still strive after this whole thing we've been preaching this whole time. You should still strive after God as if you were single, with that same tenacity and that same dedication and that same, dedicating that time towards Christ as if you were single, despite being married.
Yeah. You hear marriage, you hear marriage referred to as the ball and chain, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the image that just popped into my head with that is, you should be running after the Lord, dragging your ball and chain. Or the way the image that popped into my head was, you should be running towards the Lord as the person who is your ball and chain is also running. You're pulling each other.
Yeah, exactly.
You're running the three-legged race together.
Exactly. And so, I'm just going through my goodness.
I know.
We really do not have the time to cover all this.
No. We'll have to do another.
Oh, man.
Another or two offshoots.
Verse 39.
I knew you were going there. I knew you were going there.
A wife is bound, and vice versa, right?
Yes.
A husband is bound by law, God's law. Now, we're talking about God's law, but we do take these oaths. And this oath is made. This is a marriage covenant. Is a covenant. I heard it put this way. It's the husband and the wife shaking hands with God. And so we are bound by law as long as we live. And I'm adding in this, but as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry whomever she wishes. And of course, Paul goes on to talk about that. But we are bound as long as we live. Yep. Right? There are extenuating circumstances, and it's not for this podcast, as far as, like, we have plenty of friends that have been divorced, and that's the nature of the broken world, of course, like I said, that we live in. And we aren't perfect people.
I think a majority of those stem from being unequally yoked to begin with.
Sure.
Which would again be the next podcast in the marriage.
And by no means are we condemning any of those folks.
No, not at all.
Because we understand that needless to say, there is redemption for you, those of you that have been married and divorced, and those that are struggling in your relationships right now. That's the main point, right? Is that you got to press into God. You can't let the distractions of this world continue to cloud your vision. And if you're still married, pursue that marriage.
Yes. If
you are divorced, focus on God. And either he is going to send you another helper, or, we've got the Holy Spirit, but either he's going to send you a companion, or he's going to bless you with self-control. Yep. And so you should not want. What does both of those have in common? Putting God first.
Amen.
And so I think that's where we're going to leave it. I so badly want to get into the rest of this, but
I know. It'll have to be another.
Yeah. But that's it. It's and I think that we're only going to be going on for another probably one or two episodes. 1 or 2 at the max. Yeah. 1 or 2 episodes in this. There's a whole lot of different marriage podcasts out there that probably do a whole lot better justice. But this is where Ashley and I, you get to hear where we stand. Yeah. And you get to hear how our life has been and what kind of struggles we faced. And
I think the takeaway from this, definitely from this episode, is just as you're not to live 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in heaven, you're not meant to live 1 foot in your marriage and 1 foot out.
Yeah, don't always be looking for a way out.
That's right. Don't be lukewarm in your marriage. Don't be lukewarm in your faith.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's very well put. and maybe we'll go into this our next episode being maybe not necessarily unequally yoked, but maybe at the same time unequally yoked and being that dictator within the marriage, right? Mm-hmm. That these misconceptions that we see later on in Scripture. Yeah. That of submissiveness and everything, and how that is not what it is. So there's a little foreshadowing for you for the next episode, I'm sure. Because despite what you may think, you probably got it wrong. Maybe not all of you, but there's a lot of people that get that whole submissive thing wrong. So we'll open that up for discussion on the next one. But man, good talk tonight, sweetheart. Yeah.
Love it.
That was good. But guys, hey, we'll end it there, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week. And thanks for joining us on Undaunted Pursuit podcast. Like, subscribe, follow wherever we're on YouTube. Any place you listen to podcasts at, give us a like and a comment or a rating. That would be great. You can find us on all the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, X. And as usual, if you guys want to write to us, send us an email. So you can write to us on social media anywhere, and or at undauntedpursuit@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you have to say and interact with you on that. So again, thanks for listening to this episode this week, and we're anxious to get back and do this. And in the meantime, we'll see you guys later. See ya.
See you guys.
We've seen the ground, we felt the drought. We asked for water and you spilled it out. We struck the stone, the river flowed. You turned the desert to overflow. Heaven come down, come down. Glory fall down like rain. Mercy poured out, poured out. Your kingdom reign as heaven on earth.
The waves were out, the night was long. We thought we were sinking, but you calmed the storm. You spoke the words, the winds were still. The kind of peace that only you can feel. Heaven come down, in glory fall down like rain. Mercy poured out, poured out. Your kingdom reign forevermore. Heaven come down, allow your revival to flood this place. Your Holy Spirit pour out. Your kingdom reign is heaven on earth. Heaven on earth. Heaven on
earth. Tear the veil and shake the skies. Let your fire come alive. Wake our hearts and stir the flame. God, let the nations rise and praise. Oh, as every chain is falling now, and every stronghold crashes down. Darkness flees, the lost are found. At your name every knee will bow. We need you now to come and move, come and move. Fill this place and make us new. Spirit, move us, start right now. Heaven come down,
in glory fall down like rain. Mercy